Companies that excel at feedback analysis grow revenue 4 to 8% faster than their competitors that don't. Without proper analysis, feedback remains noise rather than actual insights. That's why in this episode, we want to talk about why most user feedback strategies fail and how to avoid them. Let's dig in. Companies we've worked with utilize a lot of different strategies to collect user feedback. They might pay for tools, hire teams, hire specialist agencies, hire external consultants like ourselves. In fact, 95% of companies are collecting user feedback, which is why in today's episode, we want to cover why most user feedback strategies fail, the biggest challenges in collecting feedback, and how to overcome them. So let's dig in. Why most feedback strategies fail? Why do feedback strategies fail? It varies by context, industry, and execution. However, based on research and insights from customer experience and user feedback studies, there are several reoccurring reasons these strategies fail. Lack of action on feedback, only 30% of companies do.
Oh, I saw that so many times in so many companies, especially if it's a lot of data collected.
Okay.
And I'm sure you have as well.
Yes. Yeah, they collect like so much data that there's kind of like, what do you do with it? Or even like communicating the findings and relaying that stuff back into one coherent message which provides direction and action is a challenge. Yeah. Okay, next one. Poor feedback collection, so timing and design.
Well, we should probably say something about this here, because like, what do we mean by timing and design? So I think the design of whether it's your survey or form or like in-person interview or usability testing or anything, depending how you actually do it, the outcome either will be very good or very bad, right? Timing could be bad as well. So depending on if your product is actually dependent on, let's say, seasonal changes and things like that, right? So all that stuff will impact your quality of feedback.
This is correct. And I think also timing is in when are you asking for that feedback sort of within the experience.
Yeah, that's very true.
So if you just download an application and then you've got a survey pop up saying, tell us about your experience. Mm-hmm. Suddenly it's like, okay, well, I actually haven't had an experience yet.
Well,
but sure, I'll tell you. I imagine it will be great. Okay, failure to analyze and derive actionable insights.
Well, analysis of feedback is a huge problem, right? We've worked with so many companies, startups, big, medium companies, and analysis and ways they're trying to understand the information they got from the users. That is the key, one of the two things, the key things, the kind of way you're collecting and then how you're analyzing. It's like a key stuff that will dictate what outcomes you can get from that. And I think a lot of people are counting on just like gut feeling. So I think they kind of read feedback or maybe even use some sticky notes, but not necessarily getting the actionable decisions on that.
Yeah, 100%. And again, like how you are actually collecting that information is going to define the quality of it, which will make it more easier to derive those actionable insights than if you aren't actually collecting it in a great way. Yeah. Another massive one, lack of customer-centric focus.
Mm-hmm. So what would you add to this? I mean, what we're saying, the feedback fails because companies, businesses, startups, founders who are running user feedback sessions or activities, they're not really focusing on their customers. So they might be actually focusing more on business than the customers, right? Ask questions around like business centric or how they could make money and things like that, rather than actually how the product impacts them and what they actually need and want from that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, next is inadequate follow-up with customers.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever experienced that in the companies? I mean, rarely have I seen any follow-up with anyone who actually flagged any issues, to be honest with you. So that's a kind of a weird one, because I don't think many companies actually do that. But I think if they did, there would be quite nice confirmation that we as a company really care about what you say to us.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also that would allow for the company to actually check if they fixed the problem that initially was flagged.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and then the next one is negative framing or poor delivery. So this is about sort of how how you're framing your collection of the information that you're trying to gather back from your customers.
So let's say we collected some data, we analyzed it, and now we want to play back to the team, and we put it in a very negative framing or in delivering in the way that is not very obvious for the team to understand.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. And final point is over-reliance on quantitative metrics without the qualitative context. Yeah, so this is this kind of understanding of why things are happening over what. The quantitative is your analytics that you see on your webpage, the data, you see what's happening, but the qualitative is the actual understanding of why that's going to come from your customer interviews. So we could dig deeper into any one of these categories. They're like huge subjects in themselves, and we will do that. We'll definitely set up episodes to do all of that stuff. But today we're digging really deep into some of the biggest challenges around collecting user feedback.
Now, collecting user feedback is something that we do for all of our clients, right? And over almost 20 years, we've seen repeating patterns of why collecting user feedback actually fails or doesn't deliver the sort of answers that we were looking for. And we've noticed with you that I think a lot of them are related to human psychology rather than anything else. And so I want to start with number one of the biggest challenges in terms of collecting user feedback, and I've seen it unfortunately in myself as well in different situations, but the confirmation bias, right? We all have biases, and those are the things like beliefs or like thoughts that we have, but we're really not aware of them, right? We really need to pay attention to notice that. And confirmation bias is one of my favorite confirmation biases. My favorite bias because founders ask leading questions that confirm what they want to hear. And we all do that, right? And I remember our recent client that we worked with, and she said to us on our sort of feedback session, when she was giving us feedback on our work, and she said, "Oh, Anastasija, Simon, I know now what you mean by saying that we can get any answers we want from our users if we ask leading questions, right? So if we structure questions in a way that we get the answers we're looking for, or even paying attention to only answers that confirm our beliefs, then we can see confirmation bias in practice, right?"
Yeah, absolutely. And then, another big one similar to that is the recency bias. So where you over prioritize the most recent feedback, not the most common feedback, but the most recent thing that you've heard to. It's something that happens a lot. I've seen with kind of sales teams. So a customer complained yesterday about the dashboard layout, so you rush to redesign it, ignoring 3 months of data showing users churned due to onboarding confusion and not the data. So that's kind of like your focus, not on confirming what you believe, but the most recent thing that you've heard. And I think that can become a challenge if you don't have a process. If you go, okay, we're going to run this study which we're looking to understand X, Y, or Z with, and then remain quite methodical about the approach. If you're a bit what's the word?
Scatty?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I was going to say slapdash, not scatty. You could be scatty and a bit slapdash, but I think maybe that's something that happens is you're a founder and you're, you're wearing many hats, so you're playing loads of roles. Then you might try and sort of approach your customer research by a bit of an interview here and a bit of an interview there, and so it can be really easy to fall into that challenge of recency bias.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of funders that we spoken to, they say, "Oh yeah, I had a call with my user yesterday, and he said this, and then I know where it's going." Really.
Now I have my whole roadmap.
Now I know exactly what to do.
That's exactly it.
Anyways, let's move on to the next one. The proximity bias. This is a great bias because I usually explain it in a way that majority of the tech companies don't really pay attention to accessibility. For instance, in the way that they make their website, platforms, apps very easy, accessible for people with problems with eyesight, right? And it's not because they don't like those people or don't pay attention to them, but it's because they might not know people in their circle who have got problems with the eyesight, right? But in actual fact, there's I think about 2 billion people in the world with problems, some kind of problems with eyesight.
I should know that fact. I don't know that fact.
I think it is 2 billion.
I did use that with the veterinarian firm that I worked with, because actually everyone I interviewed had glasses.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So that would be your maybe proximity bias, thinking everyone is wearing glasses, right?
Everyone I interviewed, all 37 of those vets over America.
But the point in this is that if you don't have specific type of users in your proximity, you can completely sort of ignore them, right?
Yeah, and you see that play out a lot in, going for nice light shades of grey or really small fonts because it looks nice on your big screen. But then, I mean, you see that a lot firsthand with your mum, right? Your mum will use quite a lot of tech, and then some like app will get updated. Duolingo.
Yes, she was using Duolingo for many years on her iPad, and she always switch on bigger fonts on her iPad. Oh, that's another
thing. Yeah, you see older people using those devices and they have the font scaled up massive. It's oh my god.
But then that's another story altogether, because interface usually doesn't work with bigger fonts for anything. But anyway, she's scaling the fonts like to the top, the max. And even though she does that, in Duolingo, for whatever reason, in many screens, you actually can't see the scale. I think they maybe block it or something. I don't know. But basically, she literally stopped using Duolingo because she couldn't read. She showed me the screen. It was light gray screen with light gray copy on that in very small font, even though you had like a massive screen available for yourself. So that's a real thing. Maybe people from Duolingo, if you're watching this or listening this, please increase your font size and make the accessibility there available, okay?
You've been told.
Huh?
You've been told.
But that's basically the gist of proximity bias.
Yeah, great. Love it. Okay, next up, the scale delusion. So the belief that bigger sample size is better. And I think that comes from this misunderstanding of these two major different types of data, the quantitative and the qualitative. Quantitative is where the size matters, and this is like analytics on your website, and yes, that's one thing to tell you what's happening. But on a qualitative studies, you only need a much smaller participant group, providing you've set it up right and you're asking the right questions and the space to feedback properly. You can find really great insights on a small group. But this scale delusion, if I'm running a qualitative study with a small group of users, it's not going to be enough.
Well, I have to add here, because this question comes up a lot on our sales calls, our sort of calls with clients, and they often ask me like, oh, but if you speak only to 5-10 people, do you get actually valuable information? And I say to them, it always comes back to the quality of questions, but also if you don't believe the outcomes from your qualitative research with 5-10 people, you can always confirm it with surveys, right? And go on scale. So you can interview 5-10 people, and then to validate, like if you're to be super, super certain, you can send your 1,000, 2,000 surveys based on the outcome of your qualitative research, right?
Yeah, that's right. And we should say N&G have done the big scaled version test of qualitative studies to figure out which is the optimum amount of interviews to run with participants for a qualitative.
I think they've run it on usability testing.
Yeah, that's right.
Not so much on the interviews.
Yeah.
So I think I think maybe there's a difference between interviews and actual usability testing. So there might be a difference in terms of the outcomes. But what we're saying is, if you're not sure about the qualitative data that you got, you can always confirm it with quantitative data of surveys.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, the non-user feedback. So this is something specifically challenging for more early stage founders, where you might be requesting feedback on your idea or concept. You go out there, you're really excited about it and keen to kind of share and get feedback from people. But what happens is people will tend to hunt out friends and family and your mum. Your mum, that's the name of that book we had the other day.
Mum's test.
The mum test, yeah.
Is it mum test or mum's test?
So it's like if you go and ask your mum, what do you think of this idea? She's going to love it, whether it's good or not, right? So, it's really important to try and find people relevant to the problem you're trying to solve that are actually experiencing that problem, because they're the ones that are going to give you the most relevant insight back. Otherwise you can kind of be chasing your tails trying to service a market that are not actually going to end up buying your software or tool.
And actually that doesn't happen only with startups and small businesses. I've worked with several huge companies that were asking or targeting wrong people who were not their customers at all.
Yes, I know who you're talking to.
Yeah, we're not going to drop any names, but so it happens for, in any size of a business. So really something to pay attention to. Okay, let's move on to next one. We call it the analysis gap, right? And it's collecting feedback without a system to act on it. So before we obviously start any kind of user feedback collection, as we said in some other episodes, we said definitely know why you're collecting, what answers you want to get. But also before you start, you definitely need to pick up a system that will let you analyze the data and actually be able to act on it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think a good one on that point is to actually have a goal. Like, what is it that you're setting out to achieve? A hypothesis is the kind of technical term, and then you're looking to have your data prove or disprove that, or provide insights to clarify or pivot what that outcome is. Sometimes you can set out these things and not really have an idea of what you want to achieve with it or a goal. Yeah,
that's very true. Okay, and then another thing that we often see with our clients is they're really focusing on vanity metrics, right? So focusing on metrics that feel very good, like, downloading, how many apps are being downloaded, how many downloads our app has, right?
I mean, the tech world in general is kind of masterful at this for raising more funds and investments. There's lots of vanity metrics that lots of businesses have used.
Yeah, but and if for instance they
which is why we are quite focused on profit.
Yes.
And making your business profitable, to sort of cut out the noise of this like distraction of running after vanity metrics. We're keen to make you profitable, your business, all of the hard work that you're doing, and your products and services.
Well, it's a metric that I definitely would be focusing on for sure. One of the things that you can get if you like looking at those kind of vanity metrics, you can get, for instance, that 93% of our users are satisfied. right? And then it's like, what's the use of that?
What does that mean?
Yeah, and I've seen that quite a lot.
Satisfied how?
Satisfied how? Yeah, what does it mean?
They call it the sun at lunch.
But what actually they doing? Like, are they actually using your product? What challenges they have with this product? How you can make your product better? This doesn't really say anything. Mm-hmm. Another challenge with user feedback collection is with something that's called past interaction trap. So, and we've seen it a lot. So asking users after the fact, like let's say they interacted with application or a platform, asking them to remember how the interaction happened, right? So I've spoken to a couple of founders. They said to me how they test their product. They make either a prototype or like live build. They send it away to their potential users. And then a couple of weeks later, they would get on the call or even ask them on WhatsApp, what was the interaction like? What kind of feedback they would give them, what were the problems, and so on.
It's like the lazy man's approach.
Some people don't know how to do it better.
Yeah.
Let's agree that everyone wants to get to the best result possible, but not everyone knows how to do it. And from my own experience, I would say we are very lazy, right? We will do whatever is the easiest. So
the biggest issue with that one, though, is memory. We all have terrible memories, so to like remember backwards about something that has happened, you're just probably likely to think optimistically or positively about it and go, yeah, it was really good, it was really easy to use, but you could have been sat there for 5 or 10 minutes figuring out how to get from one page to the next.
Yeah, and also I read somewhere recently that 50% of our memories are just made up, which is quite a weird thing to think about. But apparently it's the fact. So if we actually asking people to remember the interaction, first of all, we're probably going to miss out on, 60-40% of what actually happened, because they will not remember. And possibly they will also make up a lot of things. And not to mention we'll miss on the all non-verbal cues, right? The body language, sentiment, and so on, which is crucial in user feedback.
Yeah, and along the lines of that kind of asking on past interactions is the opposite side of it, asking about future behavior. So this is the issue where you're asking your users to tell you how they would behave or how they feel about something that hasn't kind of like happened. So it's like, can you predict what you would do in the future? Great example of this is going to the gym. How often would you like to attend this class? And so everybody's going to think that they want to do that more often than they actually will do. So it can be quite challenging to get accurate insights when you're taking that approach.
I think you asked me a couple of weeks ago, how often do I go to the gym? And I think I said to you, every day. I go every day. And then I started thinking, like, in reality, it was probably 3 or 4 days a week.
Yeah, well, my default stance would be, okay, so how many days have you been this week?
Well, exactly. That's what I was like. But yeah, if you're asking your users or your customers about their future behavior, you probably will get nowhere near the truth. And I remember this study, I don't remember what book that was, but they were sort of testing out how popular would be the washing machine that they wanted to launch. And, X amount of people said they would buy it. And then a year later, when it actually, was available to buy, only 12% of those people who said they definitely would buy did buy it. So actually, what people say and what people do are two different stories, and predict the future is almost impossible. Otherwise, we all would be millionaires.
That was definitely a washing machine and not a Tesla.
I think Tesla actually takes money beforehand
little
bit. So they're very smart. Yeah. I don't know if it's they return that deposit if you don't buy it. So,
I think they just reduce the features on them. Okay. Yeah. Cool. So yeah, another one worth really noting is asking users for ideas on how to fix your product or service. That one really pains me, and I've been in sessions where to be fair, that feels like it would make sense because everyone says, ask your users, get feedback from your users. So I do get the logic of why you might say to them, oh, how should we fix this? But when you're talking specifically about the actual interface and the experience and, oh, do you think that this colored button would be better if it was in blue rather than gray? Or what should be the label of this piece of, of the menu? That's kind of like putting a bit too much responsibility onto your participant. I mean, it's not a bit too much, it's 100% too much. You definitely shouldn't be doing that. But it's because that's not really their role. You're there to understand if it's working or not. And if it isn't working, that responsibility lies on you to figure out what is going to be the best approach by using data to figure that out. It's not really going to be their responsibility. They're not going to have the understanding or background or context of everyone else that's using your platform, product or service.
I'm really torn on this one because asking for ideas on how to fix something, especially if it's like technical and so on, I totally agree. It's like a bit unfair and you're probably not going to get really good answers. I remember, I think I told you that story a million times when I was working for one investment companies and designing the platform for investors. They came to me and gave me Excel spreadsheet and said, this is what we want in the new app. So basically move the Excel spreadsheet into the app. So I definitely understand what you're saying. One thing I said I've seen some people doing is asking something like this, like imagine the sky is the limit. What would be your ideal solution for this problem that you have? How do you feel about that?
Okay, that's slightly different then because it's on another level.
Okay.
I think the challenge around this specifically is when you're like running usability testing and you're looking at the interface and you're asking them specifically for a design solution. What you've just suggested is more conceptually.
Yeah.
And you're talking about the problem, and then they can speak much more freely without the limitation of looking at something that's already there, which can be very, very fruitful and a great way to get like good ideas. And I've seen that work definitely. But yeah, I think it's not on the specific thing you've already done. You've already put a solution in front of them, but wider.
So macro level versus micro level.
Yes, that's it. Definitely.
Makes sense. All right, let's move on to how to overcome those challenges, because we spoke about all of those psychological and technological challenges in collecting user feedback. But let's talk for a second about how to obviously overcome them, because that would be very useful for people who are listening to us right now. So number one thing that
if anyone is.
Sorry?
If anyone is.
Number one thing that can help you improve the way you're collecting user feedback is asking better questions. I know it sounds like such a cliche, but when we work with startups, I think number one problem that we see is that the questions that they're asking, the very leading questions or closed-ended questions, with yes, no answers, or just questions that are not very helpful. So again, it's really useful to think about what outcome we want to get. Yeah,
it's like, and also too direct. So you're going really specific. I think there's like different levels to a subject or a topic, and you want to start really high on when you're digging in around the problem and open and broad, and then you can kind of start drilling down as you go through the interview. Because if you just go in really specific early on, then you can lose some really important context that might show like a fruitful alternative direction which you might not have thought about. So I think like layering up the kind of levels of questions when you're setting up those is a really important piece.
Yeah, this is a great example. So starting much more higher level and then drilling down into the actual problem.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Number 2 on our list on how to overcome the challenges with user feedback is watching users, like what they do, and not only rely on what they say, right? So as you mentioned before, we have this qualitative and quantitative data. Again, quantitative data is more like tracking where they click, when they drop off.
So it'd be like eye tracking if you were, to do that remotely, or you had software that was tracking your eye,
Yeah.
you can see where somebody's looking. So it's like the what is happening, but you don't really get why.
Mm-hmm.
So when you're running the usability testing and you're there and you're a fly on the wall, you can then probe to understand why someone is looking at certain bits and not others.
Yes, exactly. So heat maps and all that kind of stuff, but definitely observing users, like what they do, why they do it, and not just only listening what they say they will do, right? So
Yeah, often that someone will be like, "Oh yeah, no, it's really easy. Oh yeah, I've got it. I've got this, no problem." And then they're scrolling up and down. Oh yeah, no, this is straightforward. But they're still on the same page, so they're saying, "Yeah, it's fine. I've got this. This is okay."
But I think it's tricky because sometimes you have to actually pay attention to what they say versus what they do.
Yeah. They can be some complex.
And
well, people might not want to come across stupid.
Oh yeah, this is a very big one. Nobody wants to come across.
And
stupid.
Everyone says, "Oh, I'm just really not very good at tech. Tech doesn't like me," or this, that about tech. It's like, no, it's just really badly designed. It's not you at all.
Exactly.
Like, someone cared, you'd be able to use it.
Number 3 on our list on how to overcome the challenges with user feedback is not to paying attention to the loudest voice, right? You can see it easily with focus groups. When you have like a groups of people in the room, and then you might have 1 or 2 people who are the loudest, the most active, and they have the most to say. So I think it's important to remember that in user feedback, we are really looking for patterns for group behaviors and group sort of comments, the similarities, rather than the loudest voice.
Yeah, absolutely. So that can happen like outside of a business user focus groups, and then also even inside, if you're doing like B2B platforms, product services, it could be the loudest person in the business or in that kind of sector of the business using the product. And you want to be looking for patterns, right? Yeah.
Number 4 is testing small and learning fast. So again, don't focus on sort of opinions. Do quick prototyping. You can even do it on a piece of paper. We've done it for multi-million projects. And you can really quickly see if something is actually working for a couple of users. I would strongly recommend run 5 usability tests to uncover 85% of issues. According to NNG, that's enough to cover potentially majority of the problems in your interface.
Yeah, that's right. That's the strategy to get actionable insights, action them, iterate, go back again, another 5, and run it in a cycle like that. Yeah, that was the one I was thinking of earlier.
Nobody wants to hear that, though. That you need to be running it over and over again. I think a lot of people is like, we'll do it once and that's enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Number 5 and last one is use proven analysis framework, right? So as we said, we're all very biased. So we do need some kind of framework that would allow us to get rid of those biases, right? So find tools or systems. I mean, we have a couple of systems that we've been using for 20 years. We always use them with our clients, but they provide unbiased data. Even though I must say we're probably always a little bit biased still. But if you use the system that helps you stay away from being biased, that massively could not skew, but could align your research with actually what people want.
How are you biased still?
Well, you still can look at the feedback results, and you can prioritize things in a way that even though you look at the list and one thing is the most important, for whatever reason, you can still decide to do something else because of X, Y, Z, right?
Yeah, I guess there's always a business sort of decision behind it, right? It's user and the business, so they've got to work in tandem. So yes, you might deprioritize something because of the cost or expense and leverage something different. Yeah, that makes sense.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
I would also say that when possible, it could be a very good idea to have somebody from outside helping you to look at your data, right? And using some kind of unbiased process, because then they're not part of the business and they're not invested into pushing agenda one way or another.
Yeah, that's it. And then they're like super easy to get shot off when they tell you stuff you don't like the sound of.
That's it. And lastly, prioritize based on qualitative and quantitative data, not just one source.
Yeah.
Right. So always look like what's happening and then look at why it's happening. Don't make decisions on just some kind of analytics.
Yeah, absolutely. It's like there's always that quantitative data. I don't think I've ever been in any business or startup where they haven't had an understanding of like kind of what's happening to a certain extent in terms of that usage and patterns, but the challenge is they don't know why, so therefore they aren't empowered to make change. When you can really figure out that qualitative bit and figure out the why, then it becomes like actionable in order to kind of change and pivot. And then when you go back to the quantitative stuff, then it starts moving in the direction that you and the business want, and it is actually really exciting when that happens.
And everybody is on the same page because you know why you're doing things.
Exactly, yeah.
And then you see results and you get even more excited.
Yeah, and it's great. Okay, great. So let's round up this episode. Most companies collect user feedback but fail to act effectively on it. Remember, startups that ignore customer feedback often fail. 35% shut down because they build something people that don't actually need. 2, most feedback is misunderstood or misleading due to our biases, asking leading and ineffective questions. Maybe we're asking the wrong users, or perhaps it's because we aren't actually using an effective or proven process for analysis. And finally, don't over-rely on quantitative metrics without gathering the qualitative context to deliver a full picture of what's happening with your specific customer base.
Awesome. And this week challenge is interesting. I would love you to revisit the last product decision you have made. Maybe you recently launched something, added a feature, or changed something. Now, I would love you to ask yourself, was it based on user feedback, or was it just some internal opinion, gut feeling, or some other magical decision device? If it was the latter, ask yourself what you can start doing today in order to start using user feedback effectively. And if you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Connect with us on LinkedIn and other social media. You can also send the questions. We'd love to connect with you guys. And go to buildinggreattech.com for free guides on how to make your tech products more profitable and more customer focused. See you next time.